Now, new figures out today reveal that 570 obese people under the age of 25 have had gastric bans on the NHS in the past 3 years, and that includes 62 people under the age of 18. So we're talking about kids, really, some of them as young as 12 years old. Now, whilst the medical director of NHS England says this type of surgery is effective and safe, should we be worried about the increase of obesity in the young and the new breed of they're calling super obese, which just makes me sad when I hear that. To think anybody, but let alone a child under 18 being called super obese.
Yeah, I mean it's quite. I mean you heard the audience reaction before when you first mentioned it. It is quite horrifying to think of a 12-year-old having to go under general anaesthetic and have, you know, a band put on. And it's hard for me to comprehend, because at what point do you not see that happening to your child? At what point do you not go out and seek professional? If you can't do it yourself, or you're in the same mental position as your child as far as food goes, why do you not go and ask for help before you would ever let your child get to that stage?
Maybe they don't want to accept that they've let it happen, because in my opinion, parents, you have let it happen. And, you know, it might be people are uneducated themselves about nutrition, and so I don't want to demonise people, but you do say maybe that's why they don't, because somebody's going to say, how have you let this happen?
That's not going to change their mindset, so they would still need counselling after the
I honestly think if a child, because they're talking about, as far as children are concerned, they're talking about children who are literally weigh twice as much as they should for their particular age. And obviously, I mean, I don't know this, but I'm assuming that these days, most doctors they've seen and nutritionists they've seen have advised all sorts of straightforward ways: diet, exercise, lose weight. They're talking about really extreme cases. And I feel that in cases where a child of even 12 is that enormously fat and they see no hope, it may be because of his background or her background, where they come from, maybe because of the attitude of the parents, it is probably better to operate on him then, or her then, than wait for another, you know, for another sort of 15, 20 years. When, I mean, they're saying already they're seeing the incidence of type 2 diabetes actually lower in the number in people who have had this surgery. What do you think?
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I just think, I mean, they do say that this surgery is only offered when all other treatments have failed, exactly as you say, so they have been through a professional network. But you think, for all other treatments to have failed by the age of 12, you just think, well, maybe they should look at the treatments and how effective or seemingly ineffective they are. But this is major surgery. This is a child going under general anaesthetic. And I just think, my God, and actually, they keep talking about cost, and they go, well, you know, this costs £5,000 now, but it'll save us a fortune as taxpayers in the long run, because hopefully we'll arrest this problem and they won't become a drain on the state. So it's primarily about financial matters, and I think I'd rather they spent a bit more at the point with children where the psychology, so treating the symptom rather, the cause rather than the symptom.
Yeah, like sending them to a fat camp or something.
But that would cost more than £5,000.
Yeah, I still think that some of these kids that you see, especially in the States, actually, in America, and you see them with their families, and they do need help. And I honestly think it's better for that child's health to have that kind of operation early on. And let their bodies become accustomed to it, let them, as they grow older, their appetites more normalise. We were discussing this earlier, and you were saying that, you know, people who've had the band, but they still don't really lose weight. But that's because they're adults, and their attitude towards food has become more like a kind of fantasy, or it feeds something within them. With a child, you're perhaps more able to start
I agree
earlier.
with Jen. I have no problem if it's got to that stage and it is so bad and everything else has failed. I have no problem with them having this surgery on the NHS at all. You know, that's what we pay our taxes for. And otherwise, you start saying, well, if you smoke, should you be allowed surgery? It's a whole other issue. But I do think you've got to get to these children at grassroots level. I mean, literally in primary schools now, it should never be allowed. Now, whether that, you know, sometimes it's well-meaning parents who are treating their children, or they're uneducated about nutrition, but they've got to stop that before it gets so desperate. Because these are extreme issues, but we all know there are lots of teenagers.
Fast food, don't we?
A child to be that big they must be in a climate at home where that has been enabled.
So what do you do then?
Well, that's the thing. That's my worry, is that you give the child the operation and go, there you are, but then you put them back into the climate where they will have parents for whom that is the norm, to just eat, you know, bad food.
So then what do you do?
So
We've had these discussions.
then?
Do you remove the child from their
No,
home?
I
Take the
Say-
child into care. That's
No,
been mooted, hasn't it?
surely the money could be spent on a professional nutritionist, even going
Exactly.
round 2 or 3 times
Be
a week.
like a liaison
literally
officer.
to be there, almost like a
But
social
that would
worker
cost
or.
more. So
Cost,
this is more about cost for the NHS. And I would say spend more at that point, putting somebody into the house with them almost, like, you know, when you're victim of a crime, the police send around a family liaison officer. You could almost have somebody like that to say, right, that you're doing now, by the way, you know, you're using a ready-made sauce. Why don't you make your own sauce from natural ingredients, etc., etc.?